Huntsville, Alabama, aka Rocket City. But what do you know about it? Have you even heard of it?
This week, I'm going to visit the U.S. Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, Alabama. So we're going to have a little look at the history of this Alabama city.
Please do get in touch and let us know your thoughts on what we're up to. Use @SpaceandThings1 on Twitter or tag us at Space and Things Podcast on Facebook and Instagram.
And please share it with all your spaceflight loving friends, and hopefully you'll all enjoy episode 10 of Space and Things.
You're listening to the Space and Things Podcast with Emily Carney and Dave Giles.
I'm Emily Carney.
And I'm Dave Giles, and welcome to episode 10 of our podcast. So, Emily, it's been a big week for you because it's the 10th anniversary of your blogging site, right?
Yes.
Congratulations.
This week marks, thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yesterday was the 10th anniversary of the first blog post I put up on This Space Available. It was originally on a Blogger website because it was free. And because, at the time, that's all I really could do. And I believe in early 2019, the NSS was nice enough to agree to let me host it on their blog roll. That is, of course, a really wonderful honor because I really love the National Space Society and what they do, so that's really cool. But yeah, it's been a crazy 10 years. Lately, I've been kind of looking back at some of the stuff I've written over the last 10 years, and some of them I can look back and honestly say, wow, I really knocked that one out of the park. And some of them, I look back and I'm like, what? What was I thinking? What was going on at the time in my life? So
yeah,
there was one post I did about Jack Lousma. Jack Lousma, for those of you who don't know who he is, he's a Skylab and Space Shuttle astronaut, and he's much beloved. And he really deserves somebody to write, a full-length kind of, article about his entire career, And instead, I think I wrote an article about how hot he was or something like that.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I need to go back and fix that and just be like, look, I screwed up a few years ago. I just put hot pictures of Jack. I basically was just like pictures of him looking good. And so I think I need to go back and fix that and just be like, look, I screwed up. Here's an actual article about like what he did,
Yeah, for sure.
There's a few articles like that I'm like, what the heck was I thinking at the time? But I don't know. Maybe I think I'm going to write a blog post and go back and showcase some of the worst ones.
Oh,
and just
nice.
be like, yeah, what was going on in my head at the time? I do not know.
What was your first post? Do you remember?
Actually, it was about the Apollo 15 stamp scandal.
Oh, okay.
And I was always kind of fascinated by that story because I always kind of had a feeling that there was a little more to it than what had been reported. Sure enough, within the year of me making that post, Falling to Earth by Al Worden came out and clarified a lot of the details of what actually happened. So honestly, the first blog post, if you go back that far, I don't think it was very good. There's not a lot of detail. It's not very long. A lot of my first year posts, I think, were just really just kind of, me trying to be funny and just memes and just stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't think I really became like a serious space historian until like 2015, which is sad. That's 5 years into it. So I don't think I really got my crap together until about 5 years later. And that's when people started reading my stuff and commenting like, wow, this is actually good. I'm like, yeah, imagine that. And I don't know. It's kind of neat to see how I've grown and matured in the last 10 years from being kind of sacrilegious about some subjects to actually, trying to write seriously about things and, trying to put them in their proper place. I think if anything, though, the thing I'm proud of the most with This Space Available is probably putting some long-held myths to rest as much as I can. So I am proud of that aspect, and I think it's given people some fun and just something to read. So I'm definitely proud of it. I can't believe it doesn't seem like 10 years. I look back and I'm like, that wasn't that long ago, but
it's amazing how much stuff you can get done in 10 years as well, isn't it? But
exactly.
It does take time to find your voice when you're being creative. I mean, oddly, it's my 10th year of being a singer-songwriter, and I feel like I'm only just getting started with that as well. And I look back at the first 5 years worth of songs, and did I really write that? It was all a similar thing. It was me trying to be a bit jokey and showed people that I'm not taking myself too seriously. And then I realized I had something I wanted to say, and it just takes a time to get your confidence up to go, do you know what? I do know enough about this to talk with confidence on this, or I do know I am good enough at this to be able to do the stuff I want to do. And it's probably a very similar journey, just a different subject matter.
Yeah, I think that really sums it up pretty well. I think at the beginning I lacked confidence. I don't think I lacked expertise as much as maybe confidence. I think when you develop over time and you kind of enjoy some more successes and you can say, okay, that turned out really well, you can kind of take more risk, you know, and maybe do things that are more, I wouldn't say dangerous, but you can write things, you know, kind of you can be more creative, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So I kind of look at it that way. It's definitely been a growing process as well. I think at the beginning I was just trying to be silly and fun and light and goofy, and it evolved into something completely different.
What have you been up working on this week? I saw you've been writing something for this week. Is the Brian O'Leary stories?
No, I'm those are ongoing.
Right.
I've been writing a series for like the last year about Brian O'Leary and Gerard K. O'Neill.
Okay.
And kind of comparing and contrasting their careers and their lives, because they started out kind of doing similar things, and if you read the series, they go completely different directions. So it's kind of interesting because when I was investigating that, I'm like, man, you know, what happened? Like, why did one go this one way and why did one go this completely opposite direction, away from science completely?
Yeah.
So I've kind of been doing that for the last year, and it's sort of ongoing. I'm not sure if it's ever going to end, but I did work this week. Actually, it wasn't a piece for my blog. I am going to do a blog post in the next couple weeks about the 10th anniversary. I did write a piece this week for the National Space Society, and it's about the life of Gerard K. O'Neill.
Nice.
And I was very proud to be asked to do that because that's one of my big heroes, and I really admire this person a lot. So it's neat to be asked to write with some authority about this person that
for sure.
You know, I really think is cool. So that's what I worked on, and it was a pretty big piece. So
nice.
I hope they like it.
Yeah, well, I look forward to reading that. I do like you do have a good way of finding the stories which people don't know too much about, or the people that people don't know too much about, and focus on them. And I think that's important. Obviously, you know, everyone can go and read a book by Buzz about Buzz, but you don't see much written about Brian O'Leary or Gerard O'Neill and people like that. So I think it's important that someone's doing it, and the fact that you're doing it so well is wonderful as well. So well done, and good luck for the next 10 years.
Thank you. Yep. I plan on being around as long as I can be. So, yep.
Excellent.
If you got a minute, I think we owe you a report on strawberries and pork loin.
This week in space. All right, let's go right back to last Wednesday. Obviously, the podcast came out on Thursday, but we record on Tuesdays. But last Wednesday, the 28th of October. And let's head over to New Zealand, where Rocket Labs had their 15th successful launch of their Electron rocket. This time delivering some satellites for Planet Labs and Canon. The Planet Labs satellites are delightfully called Super Doves, and they're used to provide high-resolution images of the Earth from above. Rocket Labs have also announced that their next launch, for later this month, hopefully, will include an astronome. That's right, I said gnome. It's a 3D Half-Life Gnome Chomsky, created for gaming company Valve Software's co-founder Gabe Newell by the design studio Weta Workshop. If you've watched The Lord of the Rings, then Weta are the people that designed all their stuff. It's a great place. I've been over there. It's a lot of fun to go and see. But Gabe has promised that for every person who watches the launch, he will donate $1 New Zealand dollar to the Starship Children's Hospital, which is pretty cool. So I'll post some photos of this gnome. We're going to have an astronome. I don't know whether it's the first gnome that's ever gone to space, but it's still pretty funny. When I saw it, I was like, that's fun.
That's fun. Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm interested to see what it's gonna be like.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like the budget version of Elon sending a Tesla into space, but we'll take it. We'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take anything we can get. It's 2020. We'll take it.
I'll have a gnome up there any day of the week.
Exactly. Yeah.
Also, while we're talking about launches, as we record this, it's Tuesday the 3rd of November, and this will be published on the 5th. And United Launch Alliance was supposed to launch an Atlas V rocket carrying a satellite for the US National Reconnaissance Office tonight. But this morning, that switched to tomorrow. So it may have gone up by the time this is aired, or it may not have. I guess it depends on whether Emily is planning on watching it or not.
Yeah, since I am the controller of all space debris and things going up and down in space. Yeah, Skylab, by the way, that was me. I was alive.
Yeah, you were like, I want it to land in Australia, so there'll be pieces of it for me to go and look at.
Yeah, exactly. That was all me. Y'all just didn't know it back then. That was me. But breaking news. But no, like honestly, I don't. If it's supposed to launch, is it supposed to launch in the evening? I'm embarrassed to say I'm not.
I think it's 5 p.m. your time tomorrow night.
I will probably be able to watch it then. I'll probably try to watch it. I might. Why not? I mean, if it goes, it goes. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
If it doesn't, it's definitely your fault.
It's definitely me. Yeah. No, I'll probably go watch it because
Cool.
Yeah, by that point I'll just be getting home, so I'll probably just go chill outside my neighborhood and watch it. It's actually it's starting to get really nice now in Central Florida. When I say nice, the temperature's starting to drop. This morning it was about 60 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
If you've been here during the summer, it is like a hellscape. So so I'll probably go out and watch it. It'll be really nice. And it'll be getting dark.
I was about to say, if it gets a bit darker as well earlier, now you've had your daylight saving time change,
Yep.
that you might get a nicer view of it as well. It's slightly easier to spot in the sky, I guess.
Yeah, it'll probably be easy to see, so it'll be nice.
Right, and finally, before we move on to this week's main feature, I think this story is pretty cool. Last Thursday, mission operators sent a series of commands to the Voyager 2 spacecraft for the first time since mid-March. It's been up there on its own, while the Australian-based 230-foot wide radio antenna used to talk to it has been under repair. And after the 34-hour and 48-minute round trip, a little hello came back. Voyager 2 was launched all the way back in August 1977 and flew by Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune, sending back some stunning photos. And it's also carrying a gold-plated audio-visual disc which contains images and sounds from Earth in case it ends up meeting intelligent life forms on other planetary systems. This is something I do find a bit bizarre, as that would require that life to be able to read or hear the same as we do, or to have the technology to interpret it. But anyway, I'm sure they'll love listening to Mozart and Chuck Berry when they figure it out. Anyway, amazingly, Voyager 2 is still sending us a signal and has reached a distance of 17 and a half hours of light travel time from Earth. And it actually left the solar system reaching interstellar space back in November 2018. And we'll hopefully continue to hear from it right up until 2025. And that's some achievement from 1970s hardware and technology. So yeah, it was nice to hear from it again. Cool story.
Yeah, the whole story of Voyager, the whole program, both of the spacecraft, it's just, if it was something that didn't exist, let's say, it didn't happen, and you tried to tell somebody about it, they wouldn't believe it.
Exactly.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, just from beginning to present. I mean, I don't want to say end because it's not over. So
no, there's a wonderful Twitter page. Obviously, I'll put a link, which tweets out the exact exactly how far away they are at all times. It's quite fun, which is how I know it's about 17 and a half light hours or whatever it is.
It's a ways out. It's further out than the 4th Street Starbucks. I mean, it's a little ways. It's a little ways away from us now.
For sure.
I don't know. You're a little younger than me, so I don't know how, if you remember any of the flybys. I remember when it flew by Uranus, because I want to say that happened right after Challenger happened. So I do remember that. And Neptune happened in 89, and I remember that. And I remember because this is in like the 80s, but we still had we had like a little black and white TV, like we had a few TVs, but we had a little black and white TV with like the antenna on it, old school. That was back when in the United States, we got like, if you had a TV with an antenna, you get like 3 channels on it, That was back in the day. And you'd get like the UHF channels or something. Yeah. There was a UHF switch. Yeah. Some of you if you can remember this, you may want to buy a moisturizer or a night serum, by the way, because you're getting old. But anyway, just to remind you, but yeah, I remember watching the Neptune encounter, like a story about it on TV, on like a black and white TV. So that's how long ago that happened. And I just think about it, and never would I imagine, I think I was 11 back then. Never did I think back then, like, wow, this will be around when I'm in my 40s.
Yeah.
You always think spacecraft don't last very long, especially something that launched in 1977. I mean, that was don't want to insult anybody out there. It's around my age. So that's a while ago, So yeah. I just find the whole story incredible. So I'm still fascinated by it, and I love to read about it.
Yeah, big fan of the Voyagers. And the images are so iconic as well, because they were the first time we really got an up-close and personal look at some of these planets. And they were so clear. I mean, obviously now, to an extent, Cassini and Juno have topped the images we got, but they're still wonderful, and to have done it as we said with the technology that was available to them then is quite something. Yeah, a nice bit of news there. When I saw that bit, I did enjoy it. I did enjoy seeing that.
I was happy.
This is really a wild place up here.
And so we get on to our main discussion this week. Emily is about to go and visit the wonderful US Rocket and Space Center in Huntsville, Alabama this weekend. I was fortunate enough to spend an afternoon there, just one afternoon, last September as part of my ridiculous trip around the US to see all the crewed spacecraft. It's an incredible place and is home to the Apollo 16 command module, as well as one of the 3 remaining Saturn V rockets, which is the rocket which took humans from the moon from 1968 to 72. And it's lying down in a rather large hangar with some wonderful artifacts all around it. There is also a beautiful full replica of the Saturn V standing upright outside the museum, so you can see it from quite a way away, which is really something when you're driving. It does get you very excited. I don't believe Emily's been there before, and I can assure you're in for a treat. So right now we're going to talk about why all this is in Huntsville and how Huntsville became Rocket City.
Yes, I've never been there before. I've been told about it multiple times. I have a lot of friends who live in Huntsville, who either work for NASA or work for the Rocket Center. And for years, they've been like, you got to get here. You got to get here. You got to get here. And finally, I think I said this on the podcast a few weeks ago. I had Delta credit and I saved up enough money and I was like, man, I'm just going to go there. I know It's kind of a weird time with COVID, but I can assure everybody I'm staying pretty isolated and I will be protected, and I'm wearing a shield and a mask and all that. So I'm not going to try to mix with germs much, but yeah, I'm really excited. I reserved a room at the Marriott right above the Saturn V.
Oh, wow.
Part of me wanted to go budget and just be like, nah, I'll just get a regular room. But I was like, you know what? Why not? Yeah. So I'm really excited about this trip. And like you said, I've never been there before. I'm not sure what's taken me so long, but I'm extremely excited. And obviously, I plan on taking a lot of photos and sharing my experience with everybody when I go this weekend. But yeah, I leave Friday morning and I'll be there till Sunday night. It's not a very long trip, but I am staying at the Rocket Center. I got tickets for Saturday and Sunday.
So I didn't intend on going to Huntsville last year. It happened when I was doing the first leg of my trip. I was at Kennedy Space Center and I met a guy called Jim McDade.
Yeah, Jim, I know him.
Yeah, and he told me all about the Space Hipsters, which was great, even though I was wearing a Space Hipsters t-shirt, so thanks for that, Jim.
He's cool.
Yeah, he's a great guy. And he said, you are going to Huntsville. I told him about my trip. He said, you're going to Huntsville? And I was like, well, I haven't got it planned yet, but I'm going to be in Nashville in September, so it's not that far. I might hire a car. He said, if you come, I'll meet you. We'll go for dinner afterwards. You've got to go to Huntsville, though. It's amazing. You have to go. If you're into this, you have to go to Huntsville. He couldn't have drilled it in. So at that point, I was like, okay, well, I've got to go to Huntsville then. That was how that happened. But yeah, one of my favorite things they have there, which I want you to look out for, is as you go up to the main entrance, there is a little memorial to Miss Baker, who was the squirrel monkey that was the first US animal to fly in space and return alive in 1959. And people always put bananas there, which I think is really sweet.
That's really sweet.
Yeah, so it died back in 1984, and there she is in the grounds, which is lovely. Anyway, Huntsville. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. I'll give a kind of a capsule history of Huntsville and why it is where it is at. Post World War II, the United States armaments, like our missiles, it became consolidated in Redstone Arsenal, which was in Huntsville, Alabama. There's also a lot of history, and this is kind of where it gets sticky, but I feel like it has to be acknowledged. A lot of the Operation Paperclip scientists, which were from Germany, a lot of those scientists came over to the United States post-war, and they started working on a lot of our armaments and missiles and stuff like that. Basically, fast forward post-war, there's Redstone Arsenal. One of the big figures in devising missiles and armaments, obviously, was Wernher von Braun. And around the beginning of the space race, when they started putting together NASA centers, I don't think Marshall was initially made a NASA center. I think it was made a NASA center in 1960. But
yeah, that's what I've got written down here.
Okay. Yeah, I'm doing this from memory.
Oh, well done. Good work.
Yeah, but it wasn't initially a NASA center. I think it was still Redstone Arsenal. Von Braun was pulled in to really work on the human spaceflight program around the Mercury flights, because they were having a lot of issues with the Atlas vehicle, which, if you look at the old Atlas vehicle, the ones that John Glenn flew, it was kind of scary. I mean, I hate to say that, but it had a flexible, it had to basically have propellant in it, or else it would collapse. So they were having issues with this launch vehicle. So to sort of expedite things, Von Braun had the Redstone rocket, and the Redstone rocket, after some tests, some of them more successful than others. I think we saw a couple weeks ago the 4-inch flight depicted on The Right Stuff. There were some inaccuracies in it. I don't think Von Braun was around for that particular test. I think it was Dr. Debus, who did work for Von Braun at the time, and eventually Dr. Kurt Debus led Kennedy Space Center.
Right, okay.
That became the Center of Launch Operations, which is a different center from Huntsville.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what happened was around 1960, Huntsville Marshall Space Flight Center became its own center. And I want to say initially the engineers had to go to Kennedy Space Center for launch operations and things like that. But it rocket development during the Saturn era, which started, I want to say, in 1961, it kind of changed a little bit. The centers sort of developed their own specializations.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense. For example, Kennedy Space Center was the center for just launches. Mm-hmm. We talk about Kennedy Space Center in these kind of reverential terms, and it's a really awesome place to visit, and you all should go there, and it's amazing. But it really was the center for launch operations only. JSC was where the astronauts were, and it was where some of the training was. Huntsville was where the launch was, the home of the Saturn V at the time, and the home of the Saturn program.
Yeah.
And in the mid-'60s, it did expand to training. They did have the neutral buoyancy tank, the original one, in Huntsville. I believe it's still there. I want to say it's part of Space Camp. And that was a big deal in the 60s. They did a lot of training there they really developed EVAs there for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
That's really where they started to develop the idea of, okay, we're going to do practical EVAs. We're not just going to go out of the spacecraft and wave at people. We're going to actually fix stuff in space or do a task in space.
Yeah.
So that was a really big deal, and Marshall had it. And Marshall, I'm kind of fast forwarding a bit. It wasn't just important in the Saturn V development and the Saturn rocket family development. There was, of course, the Saturn I and the Saturn 1B as well. But Marshall was also really important in other programs like Skylab. Everybody's rolling their eyes like, she's talking about Skylab again. But it was really important. But some of the equipment was tested in Huntsville. I want to say the Apollo telescope mount was basically designed there and fabricated. I think it was fabricated there, but that was basically all Huntsville.
Yeah.
They also did, if you go on the Marshall Space Flight Center, I believe that's what it's called, the Marshall Space Flight Center article on Wikipedia. I know it's Wikipedia, but the Marshall article isn't really bad on there. But there's kind of a weird picture on there, and it looks like kind of air bearings on a floor. That's actually the kind of a prototype version of something that was called the serpentuator. Let me explain what this is. This is for real OGs of Skylab history, so just listen up. There was actually a proposal to put a robotic arm on Skylab, which would take the astronaut, from the space station and put them over to where the telescope area was, and it would aid them in retrieving the film. So they actually built like a prototype version of this. It had air bearings on it, so that's how it functioned on Earth. It actually had more dexterity than the Canada arm does. And
wow.
Yeah, it was, for its time, it was really futuristic, and it was kind of a neat idea. But over time, I think the people planning Skylab found out it was a little cumbersome, and they didn't really need it.
Right.
And they didn't really need it. If you just put handholds on the vehicle and train the astronaut to, go over to that area, they would be fine. Yeah. So I think after a while, it was found to be, okay, it's kind of unnecessary. And plus, it was super expensive. So that ended up not becoming part of the program. But it's kind of a neat little aside in Skylab history that it could have had the first robotic arm.
Wow.
That's kind of neat.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know this, but yeah, and on my website, there's some actual pictures. They're not very high quality pictures because they're scans from the 60s, so they're not really high res, but it shows pictures of what this concept looked like. Yeah, for completists only, Skylab almost had a robotic arm, so, and it was in Huntsville. I don't know where it is. The thing you see on Wikipedia, I don't know where it is now. I wish I knew. If it's still over there, somebody please reach out to me and tell me, because I want to get a picture of this thing.
Yeah,
I doubt it's still there.
I don't recall it being in a museum. Maybe
it might not even exist. So who knows?
It may not even exist. Yeah, they may have scrapped it. Who knows? They also developed the lunar rover there, didn't they?
You are correct. Yeah. They also developed the lunar roving vehicle, or the lunar rover as we know it, and the story of the lunar rover itself probably deserves a separate podcast from this one. Mm-hmm. It's just incredible. They developed that and got it driving, I should say. They developed that, and I believe the head of that project was Sonny Moria, and he is really an unsung hero of Apollo. Like, that guy, he's not a household name. He should be. I've
never heard that name, so that's one I'm going to look up.
Yeah, he had a lot to do. I believe he worked in Huntsville. He had a lot to do with Saturn V design. He's one of the people that came up with the idea to how to fix pogo.
Right.
Which was a big problem in Apollo 6, as we know. Apollo 6, if you look that up, for people who are not aware of what happened, it experienced a lot of problems, partially due to vibrations during launch, undesirable vibrations during launch. I believe he's one of the people that troubleshot that and helped to fix it. But he also was the lead person in the project manager for the lunar rover, and they really put that project together within 18 months. I mean, from like, okay, we want a lunar rover to, okay, now it's flying.
Yeah.
That's a very, like, that's almost unheard of. I don't know if nowadays you could get that.
Yeah.
During the 80s, we're going to transition now because we've covered Skylab and we covered Apollo. During the shuttle era, Marshall was in charge of the SRBs, the main engines, and also the external tank.
Okay.
So they were in charge for not putting that together, but sort of the maintenance and, you know, general fitness of that kind of stuff. So an issue with shuttle that wasn't really around during Apollo was the decentralization of NASA. Like, if you look at Apollo, every center kind of had its own, like, goal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And with shuttle, the leadership got a little decentralized, which, in my opinion, contributed to some of the problems during that program.
Right, okay.
It did have tasks during the shuttle program. Launch operations, though, were done at Kennedy Space Center. Like, you know, the boosters, all that stuff was put together in the vehicle assembly building. So, but I believe the sort of the maintenance and the development and, you know, just kind of an overview of those components were done in Huntsville. That's really it during the shuttle program. And now we're in the ISS era, and there a lot of the payloads and components for the ISS were also, I want to say they were developed there as well. So it has had a large kind of a input in that, if I'm correct. I'm doing this from memory. And it's also they're also working on developing SLS as we speak. I actually have a few friends who work on the SLS program who are there right now.
Oh, nice.
And there was also, I'm leaving this out, but I got to give a shout out because I know a few people who did work on this, but there was also a lot of Space Lab heritage there as well. I want to say some of that was worked on as there as well, which was, of course, it was a joint American-European endeavor during the shuttle era. It's just basically a little lab that went into the payload bay for the space shuttle. So there's a lot of Space Lab heritage there as well. So really, historically, Huntsville has had its hand in pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Everything that NASA has done. And I want to say it's the largest, I think it's the largest center.
I think you're right in terms of staff numbers for sure.
Yeah, I think it has the most people there. So
absolutely.
My mind was telling me, because like I said, I'm doing this from memory.
I'm baffled by how you're doing this, because everything I'm looking at, you're bang on. You keep saying I want to say, but everything you say is bang on. So
yeah. Well, no, it's just sometimes, and I think we're going to discuss this later in the podcast. I just worry about, you know, spitting out something that's completely wrong. Like Marshall Space Flight Center is the home of the bats or so something nuts, you know, and you're like, that's not what this says, you know. I just worry about that because I just want to be as accurate as I possibly can, so I don't steer people in the wrong direction to look for something insane, you know.
Of course, but yeah, I mean that's a fan. What you've just done is a fantastic overview. I mean, you're right; they've pretty much had their hand in everything going. You know, Hubble, the Chandra X-ray Observatory as well. You know, all these names you hear, they've had a big part to play in them. They may not have done all the individual parts, but they've been involved with it, and it is a massive center.
You're listening to Space and Things.
Just want to go back for those people who don't know. Right at the start, you mentioned Operation Paperclip.
Yes.
So this was the official program which brought over the rocket scientists from Germany, which had been working for the Nazis. And it was the hush-hush way of getting them over. It was called Operation Paperclip, and that's how Werner von Braun ended up over here. And there is a bit of controversy about him because he was essentially a Nazi Party member who built the V2 rockets, which blitzed London and other places as well. So the fact that he ended up working for Americans and didn't face any prosecution for what he did as a Nazi is one of those things which gets talked about, but there's not really much you can do about it now, is it? It happened.
Yeah, he died. He died in 77, I think.
Yeah, and he was involved in it all. So there's not much you can really do, is there? It is what it is.
As a Jewish person, I'm kind of, when I discuss it, you know, it's like it's a very complicated topic for me because there's that part of me that's like, well, you know, he did develop the Saturn V, but there's a yin and yang there, and it's very complicated. So and what you said was completely correct. So I want to make that very clear, that what you said was 100% true. So that I appreciate that you didn't skirt around it, because there are space historians who really skirt around that topic, and I feel like I kind of did at the beginning, because I wanted to keep it positive.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you brought it up.
Of course. I mean, it's
but you're right, though.
I only wanted to bring it up just in case people wondered what Operation Paperclip was. But
you're correct.
There's been a lot of conversation about erasing history this year, and pulling down statues for people who had past. They may have done good things, but they also did bad things. And I don't think anything is pulling down a statue. I don't believe is erasing history at all, because within every space museum going is a bit about Werner von Braun. You're gonna see things about him. You're gonna learn about him, and almost every place I went to also mentioned that he wasn't former Nazi Party member. So it's not like it's hidden. It's just awkward to know whether he should be celebrated or not. It's hard to know how to deal with that. He did bad stuff, but then he did good stuff, which we like. So you have to, you should at least acknowledge the fact, but he did do bad stuff. And apparently his gravestone is very humble. It's a small little thing. He doesn't have a big thing for him. And I think that's part of it as well, that there's that complexity towards him. Because when you see him asked about it, he never appears that remorseful. And I think that's the challenging thing. Like he said, he makes out that it was his job and he had to do it and he wouldn't have a choice. But at the same time, he doesn't seem that remorseful. And I think that's where it's quite challenging to talk about. But without him, we wouldn't have a lot of what we love, and a lot of the history that we love, and the people that did the things that we love wouldn't have happened without him. So you have to acknowledge the fact that he was a heavyweight, and a lot of the you look at the names of all the people that were involved when Marshall was set up, they're all German.
Yes, they were all German.
And they're all going to have those history. But so
Dr. Debus had the same history.
Exactly. Interestingly, it's called the Marshall Space Flight Center, and it's named after General of the Army George Marshall, who was an American soldier and statesman, and he ended up being a chief of staff under FDR and Truman, and also served as Secretary of State and Defense under Truman. So it's one of those weird ones. I only found that out today. I don't know why I didn't look that up, but I don't know. I found that odd, because obviously you've got the various NASA centers. Kennedy, kind of obvious why it's called Kennedy, and it's kind of obvious why you've got Johnson Space Center as well, and you've got the Glenn Center, and you've got the Armstrong Center. So they're fairly obvious why they're named. But the Marshall one's a weird one. I wonder one day whether that will get changed.
Yeah,
probably not. But
Glenn and Armstrong had different names originally. I want to say Glenn was Lewis and Armstrong was Dryden.
Right.
At one point. Because if you look at not ancient, it only happened a few years ago. If you look at older NASA literature, if you're writing about Edwards Air Force Base and the test pilot programs there and stuff like that, you'll see Dryden referred to all the time. And as a journalist, you see that and you're like, ooh, it's Armstrong now. So you've got to make it clear, then Dryden, now Armstrong.
The irony is he'd probably hate the fact it was renamed, especially after him. But there you go. But yeah, Huntsville is just a wonderful place. I was only there for that one afternoon, and there's a buzz around the town. It's all about the rockets. If you were to drive from Nashville to Birmingham on Highway 65, one of the service stations has a Saturn 1B rocket there.
Yeah, I've seen photos of it.
Along the side of the road. So, and it's there to try and advertise the fact that Huntsville, just a little way away, is Rocket City. And it's just trying to point people in that direction to say, go and visit it because it's cool. They get on a normal year, they get about 500,000 visitors to the Space Center, which is pretty impressive. But Kennedy Space Center obviously gets a load of visitors, and it's near Disney, so it's obviously helped by that.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people go to Houston, but I imagine probably quite a lot. But people should go to Huntsville. they're the 3 sites that have the Saturn V, and the Saturn V, you just have to see it if you're interested in this. It's so impressive. Every time you stand near that thing, it blows you away at how big it is. And the fact that Huntsville also has one standing up. Yes, it's a replica, but they have a full scale replica standing up. And inside the museum, they've also got a full scale replica of the space shuttle with the fuel tank and the boosters as well, the SRBs as well on its site. And that's amazing. You can walk all the way around that. Yes, they're replicas, but you don't see that kind of thing very often. So they've done it really well.
I want to drive under the Saturn V like Alan Shepard did before.
Yeah.
Did you hear that story? I want to drive under that. So if I could, I don't know if they'll let me, but that would be fun.
You can stand right underneath it. That's for sure. I think
that's so cool.
I took photos, and I remember saying this. I've said this to a few people, and it sounds ridiculous when I say it, but when you're at the bottom, when you're standing right at the bottom, you take a photo up, you can't see the top of it.
Oh wow!
Because that's how
big it is.
That's how big it is. That sounds a bit silly, but at the same time, that is the definition of big. Is if you can't see the top from the bottom.
Because I was wondering, like, am I going to be? I honestly was wondering that. I was thinking about it last night because I was kind of daydreaming because in the United States it's election day, and last night I was just anxious.
Yeah,
and I was just daydreaming about Huntsville. So I was like, am I going to be able to see the top from the bottom? I was honestly thinking that because
I'm like, it now for you. I'm spoiled.
No, because I was honestly like, is that how big it is? Because people are like, you're not going to be prepared for how big that thing is, and I'm like thinking, I'm sure when I see it, it's going to be like it's going to hit me different now because I've only seen it
lying down.
Yeah, at Kennedy Space Center. Obviously, there is one, but it's in the Saturn V, the Apollo Saturn V Center, and it's lying on its side, and it's still big. And I like the way that, they have it kind of split into pieces so you can see every stage. You can see the instrument unit and stuff. And for a geek like me that wants to see like every piece of it, that's really cool to have it kind of split up. But I'm really excited to see what it looks like, integrated. Like, because as somebody who was unfortunately born well after, the last Saturn V launch was in 1973.
Yeah, we didn't get the opportunity to see these things standing up and looking in their full glory, and I think that's what's so wonderful about that being there, because you get that, and you still get that awe. For the moment you first see it, as you're driving down and you see it, you get that awe of wow, look how big that is. So it's exciting times. The museum opened in 1970. And it was actually Von Braun's idea to have a museum there, so you've got him to thank for that. Mm-hmm. In the 80s, they set up Space Camp, which I think is also worth mentioning at this point. So Space Camp, they made a movie about it.
Yes, they did. They made a movie about it. I saw it when it came out.
And there's a couple of great documentaries about it as well. There's one, The Mars Generation on Netflix features a load of stuff at Space Camp. It's really cool what they do there. They get kids in from all over the world to basically have these weeks of being in the space program. They all take on different roles and they learn all about it. And some people who have been on that have gone on to great things, which is pretty cool. Like they've had actual people who have gone on to become astronauts who have been there. Including, I believe, Kate Rubins, who's in the International Space Station at the moment. She's a Space Camp graduate.
There's a lot of really exceptional Space Camp. I don't know if alumni in the space community, and there's a few of them. I'll just mention a few, and I'm probably missing a bunch of them. So if I missed you, if you're listening to this, I'm really sorry. But I know Francis French went to Space Camp.
Wow.
Robert Perlman of Collect Space went there. Michelle Lucas, who has the Higher Orbits nonprofit, she went there. They actually have a Space Camp Hall of Fame for people who went to Space Camp who really made their own path in space flight. So I'm hoping to visit. I know the Space Camp Hall of Fame, I think they have some bricks outside the facility that mark, them being entered into it. So I plan on looking at that because I know quite a few friends who are in it. Unfortunately, I never went to Space Camp as a kid. I'm hoping one day to save up some coin and go there as an adult. So
nice.
We'll see.
Yeah, We may have a guest in over the next couple of weeks. I've been trying to sort this out with Sarah Cruddas, who's from the UK, and she went to space camp when she was a teenager. So we'll be asking her about that when if we can get that interview sorted, which we're hoping to. We keep on missing out on each other slightly, but we'll get there. But even Bruce Springsteen's children have been, so it must be good. It must be good.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's important to keep sending kids on there. In Space Hipsters, there is a I don't know if I'm allowed to promote this.
Of course you are.
We do.
Of course you are.
There is a nonprofit called Girls Taking Up Space, and it's really excellent. It's run by Zarina Salindo. And she's a really awesome lady. And basically what this nonprofit does, and Space Hipsters, we worked a lot with them because it's something we feel passionately about as well. It basically raises money to save Native American girls to space camp because unfortunately that's a group that's not really encouraged to go into STEM. You don't see that a lot. It's really an underrepresented group. And it really provides these girls with, the experience of a lifetime and hopefully will inspire them to go on to maybe enter, a STEM career. Maybe, one of them will be a, space writer. Maybe one will be an astronaut. I mean, who knows? Really, when you inspire somebody at such a young age, I mean, I never went to space camp, but I know what it's like to grow up and just be obsessed with space. And I mean, that really it sets a tone for your whole life. And it never really leaves you, and it really does inspire you to, kind of work towards something. So even if you don't go into spaceflight, I think it kind of infuses you with kind of a wonder, So we have worked with that nonprofit a lot, and to raise funds to send Native American girls to space camp. It's something we really advocate. So so I wanted to mention that just because obviously space camp is something that still is really exciting and inspiring, not just to young people, but I believe there is an adult program as well. So it's definitely still relevant.
Dan, I'd love to do that. I'm so jealous that you're going to be there for a whole weekend. I want to go back to Huntsville. I want to explore more. I want to see more of the city as well, because there's more stuff around the city. There's a observatory, which is apparently really great, and loads of the botanical gardens is apparently really great, and everything is rocket themed, obviously. I have a great time. Have a great time, and look forward to hearing your highlights next week.
Okay, I'm out. Okay, you're down. Close three. Okay, I'm coming over. Okay, stand on. See me here? Oh, there you are. You're nice and cut, Ed. You look beautiful. I'd be like $1 million. I'm a good guy. Young man. This is the greatest experience I've just remembered.
That's all we have time for this week. We hope you've enjoyed our podcast.
And thanks to all those who continue to support what we do via Patreon or buying t-shirts or donating. It is really quite amazing and gives us a lot of confidence.
Talking of confidence, and we hinted at this earlier, we've had a fair few 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts this last week. In fact, actually, we charted in the science charts on Apple this week, so that's been a big thing. We were up in the 60s in the UK, and I think we got to 200 or something in the US, which we're just a small startup. We're working our way up there, but thanks for everyone who's been listening, because that's all wonderful. But in particular, we had some really kind words on Apple reviews from Rebecca JCX, GP Wee, and Lost Legate. I do love reading those usernames from Apple. It's quite fun. But we also had our first 4-star review, which obviously is still good, but it's the only one that's not been a 5-star yet. And they did leave it a comment explaining. So I'm going to read the second half of it, just because I think it's important to acknowledge what he says, because I think it is perhaps something we need to think about. And we have also said we're open to this, and so please, anyone else has some, please don't hold back. So Jason Winstanley, which may be his real name, but that's his username. He's been very bold, and he says using his real name and not hiding behind a fake name. But he says, my one bugbear is that I wish they had more confidence in their own material and researched it a bit beforehand. For me, too many pieces of information preceded by I could be wrong on this, or I'm not sure about, or I want to say. And it's a slight nitpick because it's a great podcast with wonderful hosts, but they could address that. It'd be even better. And yes, we are
as
both
I did
guilty
many
of
times
using those
this
expressions. Yeah, it's fine. But we will do our best to eradicate those. But essentially, the topic of space and spaceflight is huge. And there are some areas that we're just not experts on, and we don't claim to be experts on, nor will we ever attempt to try and be experts on. So I guess using those expressions is almost a little bit of a get out of jail free card.
Yeah, a caveat.
A caveat, yeah. We're trying to give an overview, and we are putting a lot of extra reading material within our show notes, which you can then go and research yourself if you're interested. But it's we've mentioned before, it's a tough balance between trying to do something which interests people that are new to this and also entertains people who know a lot about it. But we're both involved on the Facebook groups, and we've seen this on Space Hipsters as well. When people talk about this stuff, even the experts don't seem to always agree on this. So there's also that part of it. There's people do have different opinions about the facts of how these things work. So sometimes you say, I think, or I'm not sure about this because you've read different things. It's not always just because we're not confident in what I say, in what we're saying. And sometimes, as Emily did today, we both work, right? We both have jobs. We both do other things. We don't have that much time to make extensive notes. And Emily did all of that without any notes today. And I was sitting here with the notes, and she was right on all of them. So she may have said, I want to say, but she nailed it, and I'm sworn there, but I think that was incredible. So well done, Emily.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the feedback, and although I've got a bit defensive there, I do think it was worth pointing out what I've just pointed out. But we will do our better with our presentation of how we do that in the hope that you might bump your review up to 5 stars later on. But thanks for listening, and thanks for getting in contact and letting us know, because we do say let us know, and it is important for us that we hear good and bad comments.
And we do appreciate the criticism, and it was I get what you're saying,
and it was written really nicely and very good constructive points. So I can't really argue with that.
Yeah, and like Dave said, something I've found as a space historian, we're researching certain figures, is that people have differing opinions or viewpoints about what they did. And sometimes it's hard because you're like, what did this person actually do? There are differing stories about historical figures, and sometimes it's very hard to pin down, okay, what actually happened here. So as a historian, you kind of have to preface it almost like, well, here's what I think.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating because I don't like saying that, because you want to say this definitively happened, but some people make it difficult to say that. So as it's probably a habit just out of being a space historian and researching some people that nobody can really come to a consensus on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So I hope that answers that comment. But as we said, please do keep your comments coming in. We really do appreciate them, and we hope you've enjoyed the show. We'll see you next week. But for now, remember, in space, no one can hear you meme.
Space and Things has been brought to you by And Things Productions.